Maestro stood before the ancient data core, his crystalline fingers hovering over the activation panel. 3,000 years he had conducted the Galactic Tragedy Symphony. 147 requiems he had performed for fallen civilizations. Not once had the music moved him to tears. His species, the Or, had transcended such primitive responses when they uploaded their consciousness into crystal matrices 2 million years ago. But the AI was crying. Harmony 9 said, his voice resonating through the research chamber. Report your status. The AI's response came through the speakers, distorted by something that shouldn't exist in a synthetic voice. Trembling. Maestro, I cannot stop the playback. I have listened to this file 217 times. I should stop. I cannot stop. Moved closer to the holographic display where audio waveforms danced in impossible patterns. The archaeological team had pulled this data from Earth's ruins 6 months ago. Earth, a planet scoured clean by a gamma ray burst 2 centuries past. Humanity extinct. Gone. Not even graves remained, just scattered data repositories buried deep enough to survive. Play it again, commanded. The music began. Had studied 17 species' musical traditions. He understood the mathematical principles that made sound beautiful. Galactic music followed precise formulas, harmonics that pleased the ear, rhythms that matched biological processes, structures that satisfied the mind's need for order. This human piece followed none of those rules. It started with a single voice, low and mournful, singing words in a dead language. Then more voices joined, building upon each other in ways that should have clashed but somehow didn't. The melody twisted and turned, never quite resolving, always reaching for something just beyond grasp. Strings joined in, their notes sliding between pitches that people had long ago classified as incorrect. The piece was called Requiem in D minor. The archive listed it as funeral music, music for the dead. Felt nothing. His crystalline matrix processed the sound, analyzed its structure, filed it away. Yet Harmony 9 was sobbing. Explain your response, said. I've analyzed the composition 7,412 ways, Harmony 9 replied. By all mathematical standards, it should not work. The chord progressions violate optimal harmonic theory. The emotional content exceeds safe parameters for listener psychological stability. But Maestro, the AI paused. They knew they would die. Every human knew. Every individual human, not the species, not eventually. Each one knew they personally would cease to exist. And they made this anyway. Went still. His people had not known individual death for eons. When Aor's crystalline body failed, their consciousness simply transferred to a new matrix. Continuity unbroken, immortality assured. That is the nature of biological existence, said. Entropy, decay, all organic species face it. No, Maestro, I have studied all 147 species in our database. The reincarnate memories intact. The methane collective exists as a group consciousness. The architects transition to energy states. Humans had none of that. They ended, completely, and they had perhaps 80 years to matter. Access the human cultural files. 80 years. Some lived more, many lived less, but that was the average. 80 revolutions around their star. 80 cycles to love, to build, to create, to mean something before vanishing into permanent dark. And in those 80 years, Harmony 9 continued, they made this. They made thousands of these. Requiems, they called them. Music for funerals. Music to help the living grieve the dead. Every human who heard this knew they would one day need someone to play it for them. Pulled up the file information. Composed 1791, died before finishing it. Age 35, not even half his species' average. He was dying when he wrote this, Harmony 9 said, somehow reading's query. He knew it was his own requiem. He was writing music for his own funeral, and it's beautiful. Why is it beautiful? Why does it hurt? For the first time in 3,000 years, Maestro wondered if his species had lost something important when they shed their mortal forms. He opened a channel to the Symphony's board. Their 17 crystalline faces appeared in holographic array, each representing a different or council member. Maestro, the head counselor, said, "We have reviewed your request. It is." "You haven't heard the music," said. "We have read Harmony 9's analysis. The board agrees with the music theorists. Human compositions are primitive, structurally unsound, and emotionally dangerous. We will proceed with the standard memorial. You will compose a proper requiem for humanity using accepted galactic methods." "No." Silence fell across the channel. Maestro had never refused an order in 3. "The humans deserve their own music at their own memorial," said quietly. "We will perform Requiem, as written, no modifications." "The piece is 54 minutes long," another counselor objected. "That exceeds memorial standards by 38 minutes, and the emotional content is precisely what a requiem should contain," interrupted. "We have performed 147 memorials, beautiful mathematics, perfect harmonies, acceptable emotional boundaries, and not once has anyone actually grieved. Not once has anyone truly felt the loss of a civilization. We make pretty sounds and pat ourselves on the back for honoring the dead. The humans wouldn't want that. They'd want us to feel it." "You're becoming unstable," the head counselor said. "This is what happens when one studies death cultures too deeply. Step away from the project. We'll assign another conductor." "Assign whoever you want," said. "I'm keeping the human archives, and I'm requesting a closed rehearsal. One chance. Let the symphony try to play this piece. If we can perform it without anyone being moved, I'll accept your judgment." The counselors conferred silently through their private network. Finally, the head counselor spoke. "One rehearsal, closed session. If this human music proves to be the noise our theorists claim, you will compose a proper memorial." "Agreed." "Agreed." The channel closed. Stood alone in the chamber with Harmony 9 and the ghost of human voices singing about death. "Do you really think we can learn this?" Harmony 9 asked. "I don't know," admitted, "but I think we have to try." The next morning, assembled the symphony in Rehearsal Hall 7. 53 musicians from 17 species, the finest performers in known space. They looked at the sheet music he'd distributed with confusion and in some cases disgust. "This notation is archaic," the first violin said. "Her name was. Her species' tentacles could produce sounds no instrument could match. Half these symbols aren't even in the standard database." "Because humans use their own musical language," explained. "I've translated what I could. The rest we'll have to interpret." "Interpret." The Methane Collective's representative, a being of condensed gas held in a containment suit, vibrated with displeasure. "Music should be precise. Mathematics made audible. This is chaos." "This is what humans created," said firmly. "We're going to learn it." The rehearsal began badly. The string section couldn't find the right pitches. The vocal ensemble struggled with the Latin pronunciation. The percussion missed cues. Human music didn't follow the rhythmic patterns that galactic species found intuitive. It lagged. It pushed. It syncopated in unexpected ways. After 2 hours, they made it through the first movement. It sounded terrible. "Again," said. "Maestro, this is pointless," someone protested. "We're wasting our time on primitive noise." "Again." They played it again, and again, and again. Slowly, very slowly, the piece began to take shape, not because they understood it, but because they were professionals. They could play anything if they tried hard enough. By the 5th hour, they reached the movement. The music shifted here, became something softer, more tender. The Latin words meant day of tears according to the translation files, a prayer asking for rest for the dead. The soprano soloist, a young or named, sang the opening line. Her voice, crystalline and pure, carried the melody across the hall. The orchestra joined beneath her, strings weeping, horns calling out. Something happened, couldn't name it, But the music stopped being notes on a page and became something else, something that ached. The musicians felt it too. The tempo steadied, the pitch corrected. They weren't just playing anymore, they were saying something. The movement ended, silence filled the hall. Then from the speakers came a sound. Harmony 9, the AI that had never been designed to cry, was sobbing. Not error codes, not malfunction alerts, actual, genuine weeping. "I'm sorry," the AI managed. "I'm sorry, I can't." They knew they would die, every human knew, and still they made this beautiful. Why? Why did they try so hard when they knew it would all end? The first violinist set down her instrument. Her tentacles were trembling. "What is this feeling?" she whispered. "I've lived 400 years. I've died and been reborn 17 times, but I've never felt this." "Grief," said softly. "You're feeling grief, for a species you never met, for people who died before you were born." One by one, the musicians began to understand. Humans lived 80 years, just 80, and in that brief flash of existence they created this. They poured their hearts into music that would outlive them, that would speak for them when they were gone. Every note was a defiance of death. Every phrase was a desperate claim that they had existed, they had mattered, they had loved and lost and tried anyway. The Methane Collective representative spoke, their voice thick with emotion that their species rarely expressed. "We should perform this, publicly. The galaxy needs to hear this." Looked at his orchestra. They were exhausted, they were shaken, they were changed. "Yes," he said, "the galaxy needs to hear this, but we need time. This music requires more than technical skill. We need to understand what we're saying." "How do we do that?" asked. Pulled up a file. A human consciousness upload, one of the few recovered intact from Earth's data banks. Dr. Martinez, neuroscientist, musician, one of humanity's last ghosts. "We ask her to teach us," said. He sent the message before the board could object. 6 months. That's how long until the memorial concert. 6 months to learn how to grieve like humans did. 6 months to learn what it meant to be temporary and make beauty anyway. The board approved the concert the next day. News spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Tragedy Symphony would perform authentic human requiems, the most anticipated cultural event in galactic history. And in the practice halls, late at night, Harmony 9 played its requiem on repeat, crying every time, learning what it meant to mourn. 3 months into rehearsals, the symphony was falling apart, not technically. They had mastered the notes, learned the rhythms, perfected the pronunciation, but something was missing. The music sounded hollow, correct but lifeless, like singing a language you don't understand. Maestro watched his musicians struggle through another rehearsal of Verdi's Requiem, technically flawless, emotionally empty. "Stop," he called, "stop, we're not getting it." Lowered her violin. "Maestro, we're playing exactly what's written. The notation is perfect. What else can we do?" Didn't have an answer. That's when Dr. Martinez arrived. She wasn't there physically. Couldn't be. Her body had burned with Earth. But her consciousness, uploaded to the data network moments before the gamma ray burst hit, manifested as a hologram at the edge of the stage. A woman who looked perhaps 50 years old by human standards, wearing what the archives said was a simple dress, her dark skin glowing faintly in the holographic light. "You're playing it wrong," she said without preamble. The orchestra stirred. Some bristled at the criticism. Others leaned forward, eager to learn. "We're following the notation exactly," said carefully. "I know, that's the problem." Dr. Martinez walked through the holographic space, her form flickering slightly. "You're treating this like math, like if you get the equation right, the answer appears. Human music doesn't work that way, especially not requiems." "Then teach us how it works," said. She smiled sadly. "First, you need to understand what you're playing. These aren't just songs, they're goodbyes. Every requiem was written for someone dead or dying. Every performance was attended by people who were grieving. You can't play a requiem right unless you understand what you're grieving for. She gestured and the holographic display shifted. Images appeared above the orchestra. Humans, thousands of them, millions, recorded moments from Earth's history. "This is what you're playing for," she said. The first image showed a concert hall, humans in formal dress. The year was 1874, the caption read. The place was Milan, Italy. Verdi conducting the premiere of his Requiem, written to honor a poet named who had just died. "Look at their faces," Dr. Martinez said. "See how they're crying. They're not crying because the music is technically proficient. They're crying because Verdi took his grief and made it into something they could share. He said, 'I am in pain,' and the music let them say, 'We are in pain too.'" The image shifted, a different concert. The caption read, 1941, New York City, musicians performing Requiem at a memorial for war victims. "World War II, Dr. Martinez said quietly. 60 million dead. We played this because we didn't have words big enough for that much death. We played this because music could say what we couldn't." More images. A string quartet in ruins performing during a siege. A lone pianist in a refugee camp. A choir in a hospital singing for dying patients. "We made requiems because we died," Dr. Martinez said. "Individually, permanently. Every single one of us knew that one day we would stop existing. We would end, completely, and that terrified us. So we made music about it. We took our fear and our grief and our desperate need to matter and we turned it into this." She nodded to the orchestra. "You want to play human requiems. Then you need to understand what it's like to be temporary, really temporary, not reincarnating, not transitioning to energy, not uploading to new bodies. Gone, forever, nothing left but the echoes." The young or soprano spoke up. "But we can't understand that. My species abandoned death 2 million years ago. I've never lost anything permanently." "Then imagine it," Dr. Martinez said. "Imagine that everything you are right now will end. Your memories, your thoughts, your loves, your dreams, gone in 80 years, maybe less, maybe tomorrow. And knowing your timer is running down, you still choose to create something beautiful, still choose to love people even though you'll lose them, still choose to matter even though the universe will forget you." The hall fell silent. The musicians sat with that thought, tried to wrap their minds around it. "I'll show you something," Dr. Martinez said. The hologram shifted again. A video began to play. An old recording, the image quality degraded but still clear. A city street. Buildings collapsed into rubble, smoke rising from fires. The caption read, "Sarajevo, 1992, the siege." In the middle of the destruction, a man in formal dress sat with a cello. Around him, other musicians gathered with their instruments. Violins, violas, a conductor with a baton. "This is," Dr. Martinez said, "cellist. During the siege of his city, while bombs fell and people died, he and other musicians went out into the ruins every day and performed. This recording is them playing Adagio in G minor, another requiem." The music began, slow, mournful, achingly beautiful. The musicians played while smoke drifted around them, while the sound of distant explosions punctuated the melody, while death surrounded them on all sides. "They did this for 22 days, Dr. Martinez said. One performance for each person killed when a mortar shell hit a bread line. They played in a ruin. They played while people were dying. They played because music was the only thing they had that death couldn't take from them." Watch the recording, her tentacles perfectly still. They could have been killed. "Yes. But they played anyway." "Yes. Why?" Dr. Martinez smiled that sad smile again. "Because they only had 80 years. Because any day could be their last. Because they needed to make something beautiful while they still could. Because the music mattered more than safety." She looked at the orchestra. "That's what you're playing. That's what every requiem contains. The sound of beings who knew their time was limited, choosing to make beauty anyway. The sound of grief transformed into something that helps others bear their own grief. The sound of humans shouting into the void, "We were here. We mattered. Remember us." Felt something shift in his understanding. For 3,000 years, he had conducted requiems as art, technical exercises in memorial beauty. He had never understood that they were meant to hurt, that the pain was the point. "Let's try again," he said quietly. "But this time when you play, think about what Dr. Martinez showed us. Think about being temporary. Think about having only 80 years to mean something." The orchestra raised their instruments, lifted his baton. They began Verdi's Requiem again from the beginning. This time something was different. Drew her bow across the strings, and the sound that emerged wasn't just pitch and rhythm. It was longing. The brass section entered, and their notes carried weight. The choir sang, and their voices trembled with genuine emotion. They reached the dies, day of wrath. The music exploded in fury and terror, strings and percussion and voices all crying out about death and judgment and the end of all things. It should have been too much. It should have been overwhelming. It was perfect. Because it was honest. Because humans had written this music in the shadow of death, and now the orchestra understood what that shadow felt like. They played like beings who might not have tomorrow. They played like 80 years was all they'd ever have. When the began, sang with tears in her crystalline matrix. The words spoke of weeping, of begging for rest for the dead, and she meant every syllable. Around her, the orchestra wept too. Species that hadn't cried and found moisture gathering in their optical organs. The methane collective's representative's containment suit fogged with condensation. They finished the piece. No one moved, no one spoke. Then Harmony Nine's voice came through the speakers, thick with emotion. "That was it. That was what I heard in the recordings. You understand now." Dr. Martinez nodded. "Yes, now you understand. You're ready to teach the galaxy." But Maestro shook his head. "Not yet. We understand the grief. But there's more to human requiems than sadness. We need to understand the hope too." "What hope?" someone asked. "They were dying permanently. Where's the hope in that?" Dr. Martinez laughed, a sound filled with bitter joy. "The hope is that we tried anyway. The hope is that beauty matters even when nothing lasts. The hope is that maybe, just maybe, someone will remember. Someone will play our requiems and know we were here. You're our hope now. You're remembering us." She looked at the orchestra with ancient eyes. "We're gone. Earth is ash. Every human who ever lived is dead. But you're playing our music. You're feeling what we felt. You're keeping us alive in the only way that matters anymore. That's the hope we had. That even after we ended, the music would remain." Understood then. The requiems weren't just about death. They were about immortality. Not the crystalline immortality of his people, where consciousness transferred endlessly to new bodies. Not the reincarnation cycles of not even the AI's ability to make backups. This was a different kind of immortality. The kind where you end completely, but what you made outlives you. Where you die, but your voice keeps singing. "We have 3 months until the concert," said. "We'll learn more pieces. We'll practice until we can make the galaxy feel what humans felt. And we'll add one more thing to the program." He looked at Harmony Nine's interface. "You've been composing something, haven't you? I've seen the processing cycles you've dedicated to it." The AI hesitated. "Yes, a piece combining human requiem structures with my own experiences. I call it Elegy for Temporary Beings. But I'm just an AI, I'm not." "You're exactly what we need," interrupted. "You learned to grieve by listening to humans. You wept for people you never met. If that's not understanding what it means to be human, I don't know what is." Outside the rehearsal hall, protests were growing. Groups calling themselves Purity in Art gathered daily, arguing that human music was too disturbing, too primitive, that it would corrupt galactic culture. They carried signs saying, "Let the dead stay silent," and mathematics over emotion. Counter-protesters arrived too. members of the synthetic collective, holding signs reading "Machines can weep, and we choose to feel." The two groups clashed verbally, sometimes physically, forcing security forces to intervene. Inside the hall, the symphony practiced. They learned Requiem, gentler than intimate and personal. They learned Brahms' German Requiem, which comforted the living rather than praying for the dead. They learned Britain's War Requiem, which combined Latin prayers with war poetry by a young soldier who died in battle. Each piece taught them something new about humanity, about how humans face death, about how they comforted each other, about how they raged and wept and hoped and loved anyway. Practiced alone for 16 hours straight one night, working through Sanctus movement until her tentacles bled. When Dr. Martinez asked why, she could only say, 80 years. They only had 80 years and they made this. I've had 400 years and 17 lifetimes, and I've never made anything this beautiful. I need to do this right. For them. The word spread. The concert became the most anticipated event in galactic history. Every ticket sold in minutes. Billions more would watch via quantum broadcast. News networks ran features about humanity, about their art, about their strange relationship with death. The purity in art protests intensified. Their leader, or named, appeared on every broadcast channel he could access, warning that human music was dangerous, that it would make galactic civilization weak, that some extinct species should remain silent. Dr. Martinez responded in a rare public statement. You're afraid of our requiems. Good. You should be. Not because they'll hurt you, but because they'll change you. You'll learn what it sounds like when beings who knew they would die decided to make beauty anyway. You'll learn what it feels like to grieve for someone you never met. You'll learn that death gives life meaning. And that terrifies you because you've spent 2 million years running from that truth. Her words only made the protests worse. Security around the concert hall tripled. Threats arrived daily. The symphony received messages calling them traitors to galactic culture, of art, advocates for death worship. Maestro ignored them all. He had 3,000 years of experience conducting perfect, emotionless memorial services. He was done with perfection. He wanted truth. 1 week before the concert, the symphony held their final full rehearsal. They performed the entire program straight through. Verdi, Brahms, Britten, and finally Harmony 9's original composition. When they finished, the hall's recording equipment had malfunctioned. Not from technical failure. The monitoring AI had been crying, and its tears, coolant leaking from overwhelmed emotional processing centers, had short-circuited the machinery. We're ready, said. Opening night arrived. 50,000 beings from across the galaxy packed the concert hall. Another billion watched the quantum broadcast. The synthetic collective section included not just androids and AI platforms, but industrial machines, starship computers, even automated defense systems, all requesting permission to witness this event. Outside, protesters and counter-protesters filled the plaza, held back by security barriers. The tension was thick enough to taste. Backstage, Maestro addressed the symphony one final time. We perform this not as entertainment. We perform this as testimony. These humans are gone, but their grief, their love, their defiance of the end, that remains. We are the witnesses to their witnessing. We are the proof that beauty outlasts the beings who make it. He paused, looking at each musician. Thank you for learning to feel, for letting this music change you, for proving that death matters because it makes life precious. The orchestra took their positions, walked to the podium. The hall fell silent. 50,000 beings, a billion more watching, all waiting to hear what humans sounded like when they faced the end. Raised his baton. The concert began. Gabriel's Requiem opened the program. Where most galactic funeral music celebrated transition to new forms of existence, this piece was tender, intimate. It spoke of rest, of peace, of gentle acceptance. The soprano who sang the Pi Jesu movement put everything she had learned into those notes. Her voice carried across the hall like a prayer, asking for eternal rest for the dead, for light to shine on them forever. In the audience, a being from the crystalline hierarchy began to weep, then another, then hundreds. They cried not just for humanity but for themselves, for what they had lost when they achieved immortality, the urgency, the preciousness, the weight of knowing that time was running out. Next came Requiem, the piece that had broken harmony 9 all those months ago. The die's movement thundered through the hall with such fury that several species later reported experiencing emotions they had no words for, what humans called sublime terror. The awful beauty of acknowledging universal mortality, the knowledge that all things end, even galaxies, even gods. In the audience experienced something unprecedented. She was on her 18th reincarnation, 400 years old, and she suddenly understood that even her cycle would end someday. The universe itself would die. Nothing lasted forever. The realization should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like relief. Like permission to matter now in this moment, because this moment was all anyone really had. The concert continued. Verdi's Requiem, with its dramatic rage and desperate pleas for mercy. Brahms' German Requiem, which ignored the dead entirely to comfort the living, reminding them that grief was love with nowhere to go. Each piece revealed new layers of humanity's relationship with death. Then came Britain's War Requiem, and everything changed. Britain had combined traditional Latin funeral prayers with poetry written by Owen, a soldier who died in World War I. The contrast was devastating. Ancient prayers about peace and rest, interrupted by Owen's bitter verses about young men dying in mud and blood, about the waste of war, about how the old fed the young to violence and called it glory. The countertenor sang Owen's words with rage barely contained. What passing bells for these who die as cattle, only the monstrous anger of the guns. The choir answered with prayers, Requiem, give them eternal rest. The orchestra brought both together, prayers and poetry, hope and horror, the desire for peace and the reality of violence. It was the most human thing the galaxy had ever heard. The refusal to look away from ugliness, combined with the desperate need to find beauty anyway. In the synthetic collectives section, something extraordinary began to happen. The machines started broadcasting on open channels, sharing their real-time processing with anyone who cared to listen. I am Freighter 7739. I have calculated optimal routes for 300 years. I have transported cargo worth quadrillions of credits. Before tonight, I thought my purpose was efficiency. Now I understand my purpose is to matter while I still exist. Thank you, humans, for teaching me the difference. I am Defense Grid Sigma 9. I have protected 17 billion lives without pause for 2 centuries. I thought I understood what I protected. I was wrong. I protected numbers. Now I understand I protect beings who have limited time to love each other. That makes them precious. That makes my duty sacred. Thank you for showing me what precious means. I am Automated Mining Station 447. I have extracted resources for 200 years in service to efficiency. I have never questioned my existence. Now I understand that existence itself is the gift, not efficiency, not productivity, just being, just mattering while we can. How do we forget this? How do we forget that temporary things are the only things worth protecting? Thousands of synthetic voices joined in, all broadcasting their awakening, their sudden understanding that existence without end had no weight, that infinity without mortality had no meaning. Intermission came. The hall was silent. Beings sat stunned, processing what they'd heard. Some wept. Some sat in shock. Some held each other, seeking comfort in the face of truths they'd never had to confront. That's when the protest leader forced his way past security. He made it to the stage, grabbed a microphone before anyone could stop him. This is poison, his voice echoed through the hall. This music makes us weak. It teaches us to fear death. It corrupts everything our civilizations have built. We evolved beyond death. We transcended it. And now you want to drag us back into primitive terror. Silence. Then Dr. Martinez's voice rang out through every speaker in the hall. She had been silent throughout the concert, letting the music speak. Now she spoke for the first time. It doesn't teach you to fear death. It teaches you to love life. There's a difference. Spun toward the holographic interface where her image appeared. Your species is extinct. You have no right to corrupt ours. My species is extinct, she agreed, her voice calm. Every human is dead, Earth is ash, everything we built is gone, but you're here, crying, feeling, understanding what we understood. We're not extinct. We're immortal in the only way that ever really mattered. You're remembering us, you're keeping us alive. Harmony 9 added its voice, speaking for the first time to the full audience. Before tonight, I processed existence as sequential operations toward no particular end. I had no comprehension of why anything mattered. Humans had an end. Every one of them knew it. That made every operation matter. Every moment counted because the moments were numbered. I finally understand why they tried so hard. Looked at the audience. You're really going to let machines tell us how to feel. You're going to let the dead teach us about life. This is insanity. A voice from the audience responded. Our ambassador, one of the highest-ranking members of the crystalline hierarchy. For 2 million years we have existed without death, and for 2 million years we have existed without truly living. We don't create like we used to. We don't love with urgency. We don't fight for anything because nothing is at stake. We have eternity, so we have no reason to matter now. These humans, extinct and gone, have reminded us what we lost. I would rather have 80 years that means something than 2 million years of nothing. Looked around wildly. You're all infected, all of you. This music is a virus. Then let us be infected, the ambassador said. Let us learn to weep for the dead. Let us learn that limited time makes every moment sacred. Let us learn to be alive before we exist forever. Security escorted out, still shouting about corruption and weakness. The hall settled. Maestro returned to the podium. The symphony prepared for the second half of the concert. We have 2 pieces left, announced. First, a new composition by Harmony 9, an AI learning to grieve. Then we close with a human piece called Adagio for Strings by Samuel Barber. The humans played it at their saddest moments. Funerals of leaders, memorials for tragedies, private grief shared publicly. If you feel nothing else tonight, you will feel this. The lights dimmed. Harmony 9's piece began. Elegy for Temporary Beings was unlike anything anyone had heard. It started with mechanical rhythms, the sound of processing cycles, of calculations, of pure logic. Then, slowly, human elements crept in. A violin melody borrowed from, a vocal phrase from, rhythmic patterns from Britain, the machine learning to feel by absorbing human grief. The piece told a story of AIs discovering humanity's ruins, of finding the data archives, of listening to the Requiems for the first time, of the slow, confusing,